What's going on, guys?
Dude, I feel like we're covering a muscle this week that the girls aren't even gonna look at.
It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters.
Guys, of course this muscle matters. Now let's get up and let's tell the people why.
You're right! Right, Marcus. Right. This muscle does matter, and we're back with Anatomy Tuesdays covering everything about the beautiful shin muscle. Mark's gonna dive in for us.
So let's break down the anterior compartment of the leg. We got 4 muscles we're looking at. Tibialis anterior. It's going to be really important for dorsiflexion of the ankle, and it's going to help invert the foot. We have the extensor hallucis longus. That's function is also going to be dorsiflexion of the ankle, but it's also going to be important for extension of the big toe. We have extensor digitorum longus, which is going to extend the 4 lateral toes and also help with dorsiflexion. Then we have the fibularis tertius, which is going to evert the foot and help with dorsiflexion. So this week looking at dorsiflexion, very important in our sprint and running mechanics, helping us absorb force, helping us distribute force, and ultimately keeping us healthy and safe. Let's dive in.
Let's dive in. So now we're all hyped up about this shin. Why should we really care about it as a person listening to this video? As Mark covered, a lot of dorsiflexion, a lot of extension of those toes, and a lot of force absorption happens through these shins. But honestly, I think the most important thing is keeping this strong and healthy. So the biggest things we see with shins is the only time it pops up in a athletic related sport is when it's keeping us off the field. And the best way to get good at our sport, the best way to get good at our activity is to actually be on the field and be able to do those and not be hung up. So Mark's going to cover some common issues that we see with the shin.
Yeah, so when we're talking about the shin, 2 main injuries we're looking at to keep us off the field is going to be shin splints and stress fractures. So, you get a month or 2 into the season, the dogs are barking a little bit, we're starting to get fatigued. One of those main injuries we see is shin splints, which is going to be kind of the inflammation and irritation of those muscles surrounding the shin that we talked about. And then if it gets bad enough, we have stress fractures, which is going to be those micro fractures in our actual structure of our bone. So, super important that we just keep these muscles strong and that we keep, make sure we're not getting fatigued too early. So Austin's going to talk about kind of how these injuries come up and what we can do to work at it.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we see with shin splints is a massive increase in volume in our running mechanic and any of our running plyometrics, all of those type of things. We have a massive increase. A lot of times this is from the off season of we're lifting weights, we're doing all these things that really aren't sport specific. And then we get a huge spike of that volume when we get on the field for the first time during fall camp, or we get on the track for the first time during practice. So trying to build up this volume throughout, and we'll have a couple activities on how to do that in training in a little bit. Another thing that we can look at is our sprint mechanics, or just plyometric mechanics. How are we moving? If we're letting small muscles do big muscle jobs, there's going to be a lot more wear and tear on those muscles than what we really want. So being able to build strong glutes, strong lower body, and then allow the mechanics. We get a coach, you have somebody to watch you with those mechanics to make sure we're efficient with those mechanics. A lot of times you'll see a sprinter heel strike and just put a lot of force into spots that force isn't supposed to be going through. Yeah. So now that Mark showed us all the cool parts of the shin, let's go over why we should really care about this. And he covered the dorsiflexion, the extension, the force absorption that comes through the shin. But really, I think the most important part of the shin is keeping it happy and healthy. The only time you really see it pop up in athletic environments, and even just like the casual runner, somebody that's running, somebody that's moving all the time, is when it pops up in an injury report, you get that shin splint. So Mark's going to dive into why these things are happening and what's really happening there.
Yeah, so kind of the 2 main injuries we're looking at when we talk about the anterior compartment of the leg is shin splints or stress fractures. So these both kind of come down to an inability to absorb force over a period of time, or improper mechanics. So shin splints, we're really talking about inflammation, irritation of the muscles surrounding the shin. So the 4 muscles we talked about, if those are lacking strength or they're getting fatigued easily, we start to see those shin splints come up kind of, whether it's a month or 2 into the season when the dogs are barking a little bit and you're starting to get fatigued. That's a common thing. And then stress fractures is kind of the next level. We start to see those micro fractures in the structure of our bone. So again, if we're strong, if we have endurance, and we have proper mechanics, we can avoid those things throughout the season.
Yeah, and just diving in a little bit more onto these 3 things that we really need to focus on. It's how can we prevent these things? It's 3 things: volume, it's the sprint mechanics and our plyometric mechanics overall, how are we moving our body, and then it's the muscles surrounding the area and how tight they are, and is it allowing us, again, it almost comes back to that sprint mechanics, but the first thing is volume. A lot of times when we see shin splints, it's when we get that huge increase in volume at the start of a season, at the start of a track season, football season, when we come from this period of lifting a lot of weights and not doing a ton of field work to everything is field work. So during off season, we'll cover how to really do this next, but trying to get more volume in that off season so it's not such a huge spike for us. Second, the sprint mechanics, how are we moving? If we're moving inefficiently, a lot of times that's making small muscles do big muscle jobs, and that puts a lot more wear and tear on those muscles than what we're supposed to do. So if you watch that foot week, there's a lot of good stuff there about how we can be efficient in that foot, which will translate all the way up. But is our glute strong? Is our lower body strong enough to be able to support this? Third, is the surrounding muscles, how are they tight? So it comes back to our stream theory that we mentioned a bunch of times, is our calf super tight, is our ankle super tight, and how is that affecting our movement patterns? And if we're able to free those up, and we'll show a couple exercises on how to do that, is that gonna help our movement patterns going forward? Good, so we talked about the big increase in volume and how can we train to really avoid this? So a couple things that we have our athletes do here is X sets of hops. So we talked about these in a couple of the other videos, but trying to build up that plyometric volume without really crushing our body through the season. So we progress these, we add these on, and just again, the X sets of hops, you can watch some of the other videos for a more in-depth explanation, but just a light hop here, just building up some of that plyometric volume as we go. Another exercise that we really like to perform is a tempo run. Be able to build sprint mechanics while we go through there, but also volume on that legs, and we gradually progress through the season or towards up into the season. So when we get on that field for fall camp, we get on that field for track, it's not our first time with that huge spike. We gradually have built it up and our body is responding to that. Mark's gonna cover some of the sprinting mechanics and how we can build on those.
Yeah, so one of the big things, obviously dorsiflexion, topic of the day, but that anterior leg allows us to bring that foot into full dorsiflexion. Why that's important? 3 reasons. First one, if our foot's in dorsiflexion, it helps us to avoid overstriding. So if we have a loose, flimsy ankle, sometimes we'll come through in that and our foot will be outside of our center of mass. So being in that dorsiflexion allows us to come down and get as much force through the ground as possible, right as we make contact with the ground. And again, being in that dorsiflexion is going to keep us on the ground for the shortest amount of time possible. That's what we want when we're talking about turnover rate and our speed. We don't want to be on the ground too long. So keeping that dorsiflexion under our center of mass, that allows us to produce more force, more speed, and that's what we're really looking for in sprint mechanics.
Yep, and then the last point that we talked about is how can we free up some of the areas surrounding this. So ankles and calves, we have 2 videos on that, so just go back, check those out for us, give us a like, subscribe on there, tell us how you like those. But I want to give you 2 take-home ones here just to free up this. So again, going back to the stream theory, this is going to free it up for a little bit, and I think help it feel better during the time. But we're going to want to attack above and below if we really want to free up this area and not have this reoccurring and work on that volume. But one here, sitting back on our ankles, just a classic shin stretch here. Sitting back on our ankles and rocking back and forth, you'll feel a big stretch all the way through here. Spending some time here, loving those shins, really feel that stretch all the way through. And then if you really want to be a psycho, we pull up the lacrosse ball and we enter the pain cave, as Kelly Starrett would say. Ow! Ow! And we're laying on this, tacking this down, scrubbing through this area, really opening up the front of that shin. Again, this is going to be something that relieves the pain temporarily, allows it, but if we're really not fixing that volume issue and we're really not attacking those mechanics, this isn't going to be our end-all be-all exercise. Thank you guys for listening. I am so happy we decided to cover the shin muscle.
This was a great episode, really important. I can't stress it enough. I love shins.
I love shins. If you could subscribe and like our video, that'd be sweet.
Thanks, guys.